Welcome to another Did It Myself, Do It Yourself video. A 110-220 MIG welder rated for 160 amps and a 110-220 TIG welder rated for 200 amps. All I have is a 110 receptacle. Obviously, this is not going to plug into that. And even if it did, there still wouldn't be 220 there. So what do we do? In this video, we're going to show you how we were able to run our dual voltage welders on either 110 or 220 when there are only 110 receptacles available. We did it by building this 220 from 110 adapter. Simple reverse engineering of the plug on the welders yielded this simple and effective adapter. Now let's look at some of that reverse engineering and why it works. Both welders come with what looks like a 115 plug on it. And since they're rated for 110, 115, I guess that kind of makes sense. But if this 110 can handle the 220 volts to run the machines, then can you assume that a regular 110 can? And how can this 110 actually transfer 220? The way it does is exactly the way that we're going to wire in reverse our 220 plug. If we plug this in normally, this would be on the bottom. This side on a 110 circuit would be the power. This side would be the neutral. If I plug this into a 110 circuit, the welders, either one of them, since they're both the same kind of setups, IGBTs, see the 110 and only use it. They don't see 220. So they run as 110 machines, using only the one side. If I plug the welder end into the 110 look-alike end of the adapter, it automatically sees 220 and automatically runs on 220. If I plug this 220 into a 220 receptacle, and if you have one already wired, a 220 receptacle, and you have 220 power in the area you're working in, you're home free. But what if you don't? What do you do, like us? We've only got 110, 115 outlets. You make a 220 by running two 110, two 115 lines to it. 110 on the one side feeds this wire, 110 on the other side feeds this wire. There's your ground or neutral, and so 110 and 110 is 220. This is, in essence, the reverse of what the welder is doing with its cord. Time to build the 110 to 220 adapter box. So now let's go over what we needed and how we built it. One of the first things we're going to need, or we needed, is cord to connect the 115s to the 220. What we chose is the extra heavy duty extension cord. We got this at Do It Best. And you see here it says 12/3. That means it's 3 wire of 12 gauge. Now part of the reason we got this is 25-foot length, is one end already has our 115 on it. So we only need, one of our plugs is already there. So if we cut this in half, we get two 12.5 foot from 110 or 115 receptacles to the 220 receptacle box we're going to build. And 12.5 on each side is quite a bit of length, and we want to make sure we had enough length that we could reach receptacles we had in the room, because you need receptacles that are on separate circuits. The receptacle box we chose is a plastic one with 2 inputs or outputs that we can run our 3-wire 12 gauge into. and then wire that to the 220 plug itself. It has two inputs or outputs, and we chose this one because it's plastic, so we can put it down on any surface and not worry about shorting, and if there's a short inside, it's not going to hit us. Run the wires through that and wire up our receptacle. Showing you the stripping and inserting the wires into the 220 receptacle. But you see there's the ground, and then there's 110, 115, and another 110, 115. So the wires coming from our individual 110, 115 receptacles have to feed one side with the 110 and the other side with 110. The green wires are our ground, so both grounds can be connected together. The white wires, the neutrals, we're not using, so we clip them off even. But even clipping them off even, you should put something over them, so we chose to put acorn nuts on them. And we didn't want to put them in the same acorn. We're keeping them independent. So the black lead from one of the 115s is going to this side, and the black lead from the other 115 wire is going to the other side. So 110, 115, 110, 115, 220, and a ground or a neutral. Okay, then when you have this all wired up, and you should wire them, when you strip them, get them as close as you can, so when you put them in, the copper goes in, and then there's insulation where it goes in right up to the plastic of the receptacle. We have our digital meter set to ohms, 0.0. And we're going to verify that our wires are connected correctly. So the right side of the receptacle, and on the plug, if you're looking at it this way, it's the left side. We want to verify that that wire is going to one of the power leads. This is the black wire from this receptacle going to feed one wire, which means that the black wire or the left side on this one should feed the other wire, and it does. We have from these. Now the neutral off. The ground, though, has continuity. If we can connect it right, there we go. This one, it's sealed, but we just verified that the greens and the blacks and the whites are the way they should be, which, considering that it's sold to the public, I would think it would be. But for the one we're wiring, we had to make sure that we had the black wire, which is the power wire, feeding the left side here, but will be the right side in the receptacle, and that the white one, or the neutral, is going to the other side, and the green wire is going to the ground. So both of these are feeding this correctly and are wired the same. Now that means that these are okay and this is okay, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the receptacles in your wall are the same or wired correctly. Our power receptacle, We're still on voltage. We have both wires plugged in. This one's going to the 115, 110, 115 on that wall. This one is going to the 110, 115 up on this wall. And if we check, we have 120 volts on this side, volts on that side. So 120 and 120 is our 110 and 110 is our 220, or in this case it looks like 240. And if we plug in the adapter, we get, for the welders, should be the same situation where if we plug in one side, we should show the other side 120. So now the 220 receptacle box is feeding the adapter plug and giving each side 110 and 110. So like we stated in the beginning, we're basically doing the reverse, or we did the reverse at the receptacles. And it looks like this works. So I have the power lead from my TIG welder plugged into a 110, and I wouldn't recommend this. It's just this wire won't reach to the wall right now, so don't use a short thingy like this. So I plugged it in here, and if I come to the front of the unit, I'm in stick mode, MMA mode, and I crank this up. The highest it'll go is 90 amps because the sensors are reading 110, 115. If I then take that same plug it into the adapter that's on our 220 circuit, and come over, still in the same mode, MMA, let's see what happens. Turn it up, 90, 92, 93, 94. It now senses we have 220 volts and will allow it to ramp up to 200, or to its max, which is 170 in stick mode. So I've got 220, it's working, and yes, I've welded with it, so it does work. Doesn't just show it on the gate, it just doesn't just show it here, it actually welds at that